Episode 2 of Frozen Planet is about spring. So unlike the rest of the episodes, this episode actually opens up in Antarctica. Most episodes open up in the Arctic, and from there we work our way south. This one we open up in Antarctica. And here we see Adelie Penguins. So the Adelie Penguin sequence is quite iconic. It's probably one of the more famous sequences from the series, and it's hilarious. We basically see a load of male Adelie penguins come in, and they have to start building nests to attract females. They do that by collecting stones, and we see a lot of males going out their way to collect stones, but a lot of the time, that hard work is actually in vain, because there's other penguins that just want to rob them. So it's really funny watching these penguins, they're working hard, they're collecting stones, they put them down, and their neighbour just comes over and pinches them. And they keep doing it, and it is very funny. The music really helps. It's pretty hilarious. And we see that one penguin that keeps stealing all the stones, just chasing everyone else off. Really good stuff. And then we go back to the Arctic, and we see a female polar bear with 3 cubs, which is quite unusual, and we basically follow them for a little bit. We learn that one cub doesn't make it, as we kind of expected. Amber does say that one of the cubs is slower than the rest, and we see the cubs just playing about in the snow. This episode is very fun. It is a really fun episode. I said in my review for the first episode that this series does a really good job of balancing quite fun, light-hearted stuff to quite dark stuff, and I think as the series goes on, it does get darker as we go into winter, but as this episode is about spring, it is pretty much light-hearted. It's all about the new life coming in, and it is quite fun. So the 2 polar bear cubs playing in the snow is really good. The music helps as well. It's really fun. And the mother just trying to get them to stop playing and follow her. It's just followed by them just ignoring her and going back to playing. It's really good, but it does ultimately create an undertone of kind of seriousness by talking about how, the female's milk's about to dry up and they really need to, get their arse in gear if they're going to catch enough seals to survive the winter. We also see a male polar bear going after a seal pup. That's quite good. It's not the best polar bear going after a seal sequence I've ever seen. I've seen more high-octane ones in series like The Hunt, but it's quite good. There was an element of, me being on the edge of my seat wanting the seal pup to get away. Again, we got our polar bear dosage in this episode. They do pop up throughout the series, but we got a good chunk of polar bear sequences here. We see that when things warm up during the spring, the frozen lakes start to melt. This frozen river just bursts its banks. It's very good. Similarly to the glacier sequence in the first episode, it does a good job of showing you how powerful the river is once it's unlocked. And like the first episode, we see a lot of migrants coming in. We see birds catching cod. That's all fine. Narwhals, the narwhal sequence is quite good. We just see narwhals following the little cracks in the ice, and it's quite narrow, and eventually they bump into another group of narwhals, and they've just got to turn around and go the other way. It's quite good. Again, it's nice seeing narwhals. We see a bit more of them, and they look like they're kind of frolicking in the water. They describe the tusks, which is obviously the most famous things about narwhals, but we don't really know what it's for, and I think that's quite good as well. One of the most surprising sequences from this episode was the caterpillar sequence. The woolly caterpillar was a really good sequence, because you think of the Arctic, you think of polar bears, you think walruses, stuff like that. You don't think of caterpillars, but we see this one caterpillar that's going out, it's feeding, but unfortunately because the ice is going to come in, it's not able to feed enough to get it through its life cycle, so it just has to freeze itself completely and wait to the next spring to feed. That's really good, and we see that this caterpillar is actually 14 years old by the time it's able to become a moth. Really interesting. This caterpillar was actually just 1 year younger than I was when this series came out, which makes me feel quite old. But no, that was a really good sequence. It's one of the things I remember most from the series, and it just because it's so unusual, and it's really good. It's really interesting. It's not something you expect anyway. And then we see Arctic wolves for a bit. We see them catching ducklings. It's clearly not their ideal prey, and we see that while the spring is great for most things, the fact that they're white, they do stand out quite a bit. So maybe it isn't the most ideal time for them hunting. And seeing all the wolf pups again is quite nice. It's quite fun and lighthearted, like the rest of this episode. So that was quite good as well. And then we go to the Antarctic. So most of the Antarctic sequences take place in South Georgia. We focus on wandering albatrosses quite a bit. We see quite a lot of them, to be fair. We just see them flying in, nursing their chicks through the winter. The chicks are obviously massive, like we've seen in previous series. We see albatross pairs meeting up again, reuniting, mating, all nice stuff. And the end result of all that, when the chicks are having to fledge, is really good. It's quite a fun sequence. The music really helps. I think this is the best sequence in the episode for music. It's very fun. Seeing the albatross kind of try and fail multiple times to take off is really good. So when it eventually does take off, you do feel like you've, gone on a journey with it. And the end of that sequence is quite good because it talks about how, this albatross is not going to touch ground again for years. Really interesting stuff. Also, we see king penguins. We focus on them a little bit. I think they get a bit more screen time in the next episode. But the other main thing there is the elephant seals. Elephant seal fights are kind of, an obligation in this kind of series. But it is really good. The elephant seal fight is pretty brutal. It's very good, bloody. Not as good as the one in Blue Planet, I don't think, but it's still pretty good. And yeah, I like that again. Elephant seal fights is something I've seen a lot in these kind of series. And they're all kind of similar. But they're always pretty reliable, they're always pretty good. And then we kind of end the episode back with the Adelie penguins, all good stuff. We see the females come in, they're all mating, it's really good. And there is this whole sequence where the orcas come in, and the Adelie penguins are having to jump out the water to escape the orcas. It's a really funny sequence when the one penguin is on the ice and it's just drifting away, and these orcas are obviously in the water, and it's like, where do I go, where do I go? The shots of the orcas spy hopping out the water is amazing. Again, as I said in the last episode, it is the most iconic shot from the series. It is tremendous, but it does kind of undercut the whole tension of the sequence by talking about how the penguins penguins were never in any danger because these particular orcas only eat fish. Yeah, it kind of feels like you've kind of, manipulated the audience a little bit. But I feel like the quality of the shots we're getting in that sequence kind of make up for the fact that it's pretty underwhelming narratively. And then we get the diaries. So the diaries is all about the people filming the Adelie Penguins, or mostly just surviving with the Adelie Penguins. This is a really good diary sequence. Like the rest of the episode, it's pretty fun. Although it does have an element of danger, we really see how they could really die in these horrific winds. Like it almost looks like a hurricane. It is really funny watching them just kind of go mad over the course of it. Watching them sledging down the ice and just kind of having these weird conversations with each other. The description of the penguin traffic is hilarious. Again, it's a diary sequence that I've stuck with me for quite a few years, and it is really good. Yes, I really like that as well. So yeah, this episode is pretty good. Again, it's a pretty fun, reliable episode. As I said, this series will get darker, but this is a pretty fun episode. It is the most fun and lighthearted episode of the series. I think if you're the type of person that doesn't really like watching these series because there is, threat to animals or animals get killed and everything, just watch this one. It's pretty fun, you have a good time. Polar bears playing in the snow, penguins stealing rocks. It's pretty fun. It's even got a kind of wholesome orca sequence. So yeah, this episode's really good. I think the highlights for me are the Adelie Penguins. They're obviously fantastic. The caterpillar's also great. And as much as the orca sequence is a bit underwhelming, the shots are amazing, so I also really like that as well. So yeah, what did you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be back next week with a summer episode, so, more hot, light-hearted stuff. And feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, or don't if you don't want to. It's perfectly fine. I'll see you next week, and goodbye.